All right, welcome. We'll call the K-12 Subcommittee to order. Madam Clerk, let's open up the board and members be ready to enter in that you are present and accounted for on the roll call. All right, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you for that. Members, any personal orders before we begin? We do have a pretty short calendar today. I will say item number 1 has been rolled 1 week. So House Bill 392 has been rolled 1 week. And I will turn the gavel over to Chairman White for the next couple of items.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Haston. The members, we're now on item number 2, House Bill 225 by Chairman Haston. Motion. You have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Your bill is now in order for us to discuss any amendments that we need to deal with.
Yes, I do have an amendment, and it does not rewrite the bill. It's drafting code 3522.
Okay, that's the one that I do have. Members, everyone have 3522. It does not.
Motion on the amendment.
Got a motion and a second on the amendment. Any objection to adding the amendment or to the bill, or you want to discuss the amendment first, Chairman?
I'll just say it just made a couple of corrections. It changed LEA to school site I think it was section 3, and then it added some coordinated school health language in section 7. That's all it did. It did not rewrite the bill.
Okay, members, with that explanation, any questions to the sponsor that you would like to ask before we move forward on the amendment? Seeing none, so there's any objection to adding amendment 3522 onto House Bill 225? Seeing no objections, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is properly amended. Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you. This bill establishes a community schools grant program that would benefit public schools, whether urban or rural. Does this by removing barriers to learning and strengthening the supports to families and the community as a whole. This grant program would work in conjunction with coordinated school health, and it would be a program that would have the University of Tennessee as its grant administrator. Just a couple more points I'd like to add before I take any questions, if there are some. Research shows that properly implemented full-service community schools can lead to reduced absenteeism, increases in math and ELA test scores, and reduced school discipline rates. Community schools produce high return on investment, with every $1 invested yielding more than $7 in net benefits. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, I have Representative McKenzie. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, our community schools, at least in Knox County, have been a great asset. I remember I was on county commission when Pond Gap was the first one, really eclectic group of folks, through the University of Tennessee, just a real diverse community, and that really helped that school. My question, though, is a couple of them. The first one is, why are we removing a requirement for the OREA to review the program, especially with this change? It would be a great time to review it and continue to see how it's working statewide.
Chairman.
Yeah, I do believe that some of this oversight would be coming from some of the evaluation process from the University of Tennessee. But we do have a couple of folks that would be down that might be able to answer that question in detail here in a minute. But I'll try to answer your second question before we might ask the chairman to go out of session to have that one in detail answered.
You're recognized, Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that probably is going to be the same to Chair, is that it was going to be why the University of Tennessee with a statewide program like this, and it being, I would consider it clustered at there at UT. So you may want to, we will go on the session.
Chairman, would you like to go out of session for, okay. Without objection, members, we're out of session. And I have you see here, Mr. Drew Sutton, if you would come forward, sir. We also have Caitlin Stewart and Amber Reeves. All three, okay, great. Okay, we're going to start, if you will, as each of you speak, and I think we have about a minute each. Can you wrap it in about a minute, your comments? Okay. Drew, I'm going to start with you. If you state your name and your position for the live stream. You're recognized.
Thank you. Drew Sutton with the Tennessee Education Association, and we're here to just answer any questions that are available. I don't necessarily have any comments prepared other than what Chairman Haston offered about the bill.
Representative McKenzie, would you like to address your question to one of the members before us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know what the qualifications are, so I'll just throw the question out there. So you heard, the great thing about this program is that it was kind of data driven. They had a pilot with one school, saw what worked, saw what didn't, did an evaluation, and then they grew it into that. That to me is what made this Tennessee Community Schools Act a great bill. I think we might be losing that by saying we want UT to look at it. I don't know what uniquely qualifies the Boyd Center, whomever, to do it as opposed to our own OREA. And so why are we doing away with that? I would think that we would want to keep that is my first question.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative McKenzie, I don't think the intention was to obscure any reporting requirements or anything like that. I was aware in 2019, I believe, was the last report that OREA had issued. We were strongly supportive of the state taking a look at this. The reason that UT was the intent and the language of the bill was to create more of a reporting mechanism and a requirement. The University of Tennessee is the grant administrator and the evaluator of any grants that would be issued through this bill. The thinking was that since they were going to be so closely involved with working with any potential grant recipients, that they would be best positioned to articulate any findings or learnings as a result of the grant. But I don't think anybody's opposed to an independent agency like OREA conducting some sort of a review. So if that's something that interests you, we're more than happy to talk about that.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart, Ms. Reeves, do you have any comment on that question? Or Mr. Representative McKenzie, would you like to, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so that dovetails, I think, nicely into my second question. And that is, why we, this again, we're kind of growing it to a statewide program. So you got the administrator of the grant evaluating the grant. I love money coming into my district, and I really do. So, but is that really the best way to administer and to monitor a grant? What I would say that could potentially have a significant impact, because the precepts are good. So I don't want anyone to think that I am against having these types of community schools. I'm not. I just think that we had a model, it's working well, and that. So I appreciate you saying that you will consider at least having OREA look at it every 3 to 5 years or something like that, just to get a sound, independent look. But then so my question to you is, why the University of Tennessee? Just ask it that way.
Would Ms. Stewart or Ms. Reeves, would y'all like to address that, or we can go back to Mr. Sutton?
Sure, I'm happy to address. My name is Caitlin Stewart. I'm the District Coordinator of Community Schools in Hamilton County Schools, Tennessee. I'm also the co-chair of our state network. We believe that bringing on the university as a university-assisted partner really supports the legitimacy of a grant program through the state. And we believe that because of the robust system of the University of Tennessee partners throughout the state, that we would be able to bring in a lot of supportive infrastructure to districts that might not have the capacity, whether funding or through personnel, to be able to support some of those pieces that it takes at the systems level to make sure that we have what we need in order for the community school strategy to work in those individual communities.
You have one more follow-up? You're recognized.
And you all may not know, but if you can get it back to the committee, what's the overhead rate that the University of Tennessee is charging for this grant?
Mr. Sutton.
Happy to answer that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A representative in the fiscal note, it contemplates about a 15% administrative set aside. That can fluctuate just a little bit in consultation with the University of Tennessee. But one other thing I wanted to add to your question, when we were considering bringing this bill, one of the first things we did was take a look at other states to see what sort of support systems they had put in place when they tried to introduce state funding to support community schools that were, locally led initiatives and things like that. We wanted to make sure we were looking at what worked elsewhere. And the main reason we looked at the University of Tennessee as an evaluator and administrator is because of what we saw in the state of Florida. They've got a similar program that they enacted a few years ago with the University of Central Florida as their grant administrator and evaluator, and they've had a lot of really good success there. I think they're up to somewhere in the neighborhood of about $40 million in grants per year that they manage through the UCF system. And so we talked to some of the people in Florida about how that worked, and that really kind of served as the inspiration for this approach, obviously in consultation with the University of Tennessee and the Boyd Center as well.
Thank you very much, Representative Kinsey. That's complete your line of questioning. Okay, thank you. Representative Bolso, do you want to ask a question when we're back in session or now? Right now. Okay, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just address this question to the panel generally. So Mr. Sutton, Ms. Stewart, or Ms. Reese, feel free to answer. This proposed legislation actually repeals an entire part of the Tennessee Code that was adopted just in 2014 and replaces it with this new proposed act. Are you able to list for me the material differences between the Community Schools Act as it currently exists in code and this new proposal?
You're recognized. Who would like to take that on? Okay, Ms. Reeves.
Yeah, Amber Reeves. I am the co-chair of the Tennessee Community School State Network. Good morning. The big change is one language, right? So we changed and became more inclusive or less prescriptive with the language and allowed communities and community schools and local communities to, for example, when we have enhanced learning opportunities, instead of prescribing that it has to be either before school or after school, allowing communities to decide which one served their community the best. So updating the language as community schools has evolved from where it was in 2014 was one of the new addresses for this bill. Two, in 2014, there wasn't any state funding support for that. We've now asked for some state funding support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized.
As Representative McKenzie noted, previously we were getting reports from the Comptroller's Office through OREA. Are you able to tell us whether any of those reports noted any deficiencies in the existing system or in its application?
You're
Bringing that-
recognized. Mm-hmm.
I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you so much for bringing up that question. We did have a comptroller report completed in 2018, and from the result of that report, it explained that there were some inconsistencies around the structure of community schools or the framework in different communities, as well as it recommended that as a state, as we are doing community schools programming and strategies throughout the state, that we needed to have common metrics to be able to measure and speak to the outcomes that the community school strategy claims. And so as a state network working alongside of the University of Tennessee and other initiatives throughout the state who are implementing the strategy, we have taken those recommendations and addressed them as a state coalition and are utilizing common metrics so that we can do common reporting to show what it looks like not only at our individual community levels, but also in terms of collective impact across the state.
Representative Bolso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard from several constituents about this proposal. All of them are against it. And in part because when we look at this new language in the definition section, it talks about, creating an operational model that includes a plan for, quote, coordinating and integrating educational, developmental, family, health, and other comprehensive services through a community partner close quote. And my constituents are concerned that this is actually the school system actually trying to become more of the family to the child and going outside of its proper bounds as an academic institution. And in particular, there are concerns that this is now being, if adopted, going to be operated by the University of Tennessee. And obviously no offense to the University of Tennessee, a very fine institution, but higher education, as we all know, is very left-leaning in this country. And we see that most recently through these protests on.
Sorry, the mic's a little slow. Representative Bosso, would you mind recognizing point of order? Representative McKenzie?
Sure.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My point of order is primarily that is presidential and not on the bill.
Okay, Chairman, thank you. Representative Bosso, keep your comments more to the bill and not off on any of the university, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my comments are directly on the bill. I have constituents are concerned about some of the liberal tendencies of our universities infecting our K-12 educational program. That's one concern my constituents have raised. So it may be true, it may be untrue, but it is directly on the bill. And I'd like to give this panel the opportunity to respond to that criticism that some have about, does this give higher education the ability to start influencing developmental, family, health, and other comprehensive matters that pertain to K-12 education?
Okay, I will entertain Reverend McKenzie. Before I go back to the panel, do you have another comment?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just comment on what the representative just brought. That there's absolutely no proof to that. My university, University of Tennessee, is not considered a left-leaning liberal school. People bring things to us as representatives all the time that are extremely polarizing. We don't bring those into this committee meeting. So while I'm sure he's received an email or 2 or 5 or 50, we get those, but we don't bring these polarizing things into our committee as we deliberate to try to best educate our children. So we bring facts into this room, and that was not a fact. That was something that some constituent sent him. May have been a robo email or not. I don't know. I've not received any of those. So, and I dare say most of us maybe have not. So my point of order stands that we need to deal with the facts that are before us and not conjecture.
Okay, thank you. Good comments. Okay, would anyone on the panel would like to address Representative Bosso's question? You're recognized, Mr. Sutton.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question, Representative. I appreciate the concerns that were raised, and I definitely would like to respond to the question that was posed. To be clear, the university itself serves a very narrow role in this bill as the grant administrator and evaluator of how closely the school itself would be implementing the plan that was written into the grant application. So the role they serve is to make sure that the things that the district says the school is going to do, that plan is being implemented with fidelity. You had mentioned the language around a community partner and some of the programming and supports that community partner may, depending on the needs of the community. And you'll note in the bill that there is a needs and assets mapping and assessment process that's written into the bill. So it's not meant to be prescriptive. It's just more meant to offer some examples of the type of supports that may be offered through this community partner. The last thing I would direct your attention to is in the definition section. Community partners are pretty narrowly defined, and in order for them to operate under this grant program, they would actually need an executed memorandum of understanding between the school district and that community partner. And that is not something that the university would be involved in any way. So the district itself would have to invite a community partner in, vet them, and then execute a formal agreement in order for that organization to offer any services within the school system.
You recognize Ms. Stewart.
I would also like to add that this is a strategy that gives power and voice to parents and caregivers as primary stakeholders in the school building. As Mr. Sutton mentioned, we do have our needs and assets assessment process, which really highlights those individual needs and strengths of that school and the community around the school to really influence what type of programming and services are provided by the community school coordinator in conjunction with the school staff and families that are present, but also within the community school strategy. A lot of our school communities have site-based steering committees and formal pathways by which parents and caregivers are able to provide input as well as participate and be key decision-making participants and partners within these processes.
Thank you. Let's now go to, here we go. We got Chairman Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the previous question focused on changes in the statutory language. I'd like to focus on practical application if I could. And Ms. Stewart and Ms. Reeves, if you could respond, and I'll give a couple of brief questions, and then perhaps you could respond to each of these. So first of all, your role is co-chairs. If this passes, how do you see that changing? And then in addition to that, do you see this changing the breadth of services that community schools offer? And then do you see it increasing the number of community schools that may be established in Tennessee? And if we can go back if we need to, but I thought I'd get all those in and have you respond to those.
Ms. Stewart, would you like to go first, or?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And you might have to repeat one or two of those, if that's okay. In terms of your first question, how does this change our role as co-chairs? I don't believe that it would at this moment. And within our state network, we have representatives from 8 different community school initiatives, and that is not only from the larger metropolitan cities within Tennessee, but it's also representing our rural communities in Tennessee. And so we're able to come together to make decisions about community schools and talk about best practices around implementation. And so through the University of Tennessee's administration of this grant, we are thought partners. But because several of us have initiatives that we also serve in under different capacities, we would not have a say in terms of who it is that's receiving or who is allowed to be a recipient of the grant program.
Ms. Reeves, do you have any comment?
No, I don't see our role changing with that. I don't remember your second question, but I know your third was about expanding community schools across the state of Tennessee. And I mean, that's the ultimate goal. We have 158 community schools across the state of Tennessee, and we're wanting to increase access and increase sustainability for those that are currently community schools. So hopefully through this bill, we're able to allow access to families, to communities for this strategy.
Chairman Slater?
Yeah, and one question that I didn't ask that has to do with the financing, if you may know, there had been mention to 15% setback in the fiscal summary. There is an additional $234,200 in state expenditures through the University of Tennessee. Is that replacing any expenditure that is any cost that's now being expended as far as state dollars? I don't see any note on that. Or is that additional, that $234,000? And that's annual. It increases over time.
Mr. Sutton?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your question, Chairman. That's something I'd be happy to touch on, and at the risk of putting words in the university's mouth, this is something that it might be more appropriate that we discuss after committee if you'd like some more details, but I have had conversation with the university staff. The way I understand the fiscal note and the way the support memo was written is those positions that are listed would be reclassifications. So those are not new hires per se. They would be existing FTE that would be repurposed for the support of this program. But I can tell you that we have had some conversations about there may be something with the way the language is currently written. In my mind, if there is going to be reclassification and staff up in anticipation of this grant, the way I understand it typically working is that is fulfilled. Those positions are accounted for through that administrative set aside. And in conversation with some of the university staff, the way I understand it is there was something about how the bill was written that essentially the university shall provide oversight of this grant program. So even though it may be subject to appropriation, which the bill is permissive, the bill does not say, we think this is exactly how much money will be coming in. They still felt that it was necessary to express how they thought they would need to staff that office in expectation of having to administer at least some unknown amount of grants. So I think that that's a good example of something that we may need to look at that language to make it perhaps more clear that the intent is not for the university to prepare themselves to administer a grant if no appropriation for like a corpus of a grant fund is made.
Chairman Slater?
Thank you. And I would appreciate some follow-up conversations on that, because you just touched on one of my concerns, and that is why spend if there's not going to be a ramp up? Let me just ask one more question, Chairman, if I may. And this has to do with local expenditures. This current bill legislation mandates that there must be one full-time person assigned. So my question is, does the current legislation, does that legislation mandate a full-time person, or is this a new requirement with this new legislation?
Let me recognize Ms. Stewart.
This is new language, and we are really modeling after the definition of full-service community schools at the federal level. So it discusses what are the requirements to be considered a full service community schools, and a part of that is having a full-time employee to manage the strategy alongside of the stakeholders who are within that school.
Okay, we have one more while we're out of session. Chairman Reeves, or Representative Reeves.
Yeah, not a chairman yet. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you guys for showing up today. And I'm going to ask you a couple kind of basic things, because I'm still trying to put some things together. Now these full service community schools, is that an add-on service to an existing public school, or it is? Okay. Let me ask you about some of the definitions that I see under pipeline services. It talks about family and community engagement and supportive interventions, okay, and supporting the needs of families at school or at home. Who decides what is a need of the family? Is it the family? Is that a yes? Okay. And then it talks about social health, nutritional, mental health services and supports. Is there a parent opt into those things, or is it something that's just put out to them? I'm sorry.
And this is my fault. Back on that last question for the streaming, we need to get a verbal yes or no on that last question. So back up to your last question where they shook their heads, and let's get a verbal yes or no.
The question was, I think the question was, the family and community engagement and supportive interventions and supporting the needs of families at home or at school. Who decides what those interventions are, and what form does that take?
Ms. Reeves? Excuse me, Ms. Stewart, you had your hand up.
The parents decide. So any type of intervention or support service that the school could potentially provide to a student or to families, typically there's the parent permission on that piece. So families are an integral part of that process.
Representative Reeves?
Mr. Chair, thank you. And then when it talks about social and mental health services and supports, what form does that take, and what does that look like in actual community schools now?
Ms. Stewart or Ms. Reeves?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this question, and then I would welcome Dr. Reeves. So in our community schools, we have a wide range of services and supports, but in terms of physical health, mental health, an example of that would be a school-based health clinic. And so students who have maybe don't have a primary care provider or access to the necessary physical needs, maybe they have vision needs that they are struggling to get a prescription or eyeglasses, the community school coordinator can help facilitate those supports within the building so that it removes the barriers of having to go out to additional places within the community to find them. But it's a one-stop shop within the school building.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman Reeves, Representative Reeves.
And so that each one of those services, does a parental opt into those services? Are they provided during the day or after school?
You recognize.
And in order for a student to receive those supports, family permission is something that we would seek in order to provide the students those supports.
Thank you. Okay, that was all the comments while we're out of session. Anyone else? Seeing none. Well, thank you all so very much for your input and being willing to be here today. Thank you. The committee is now back in session. Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just reiterate that this is not a government mandated program. This is a permissive grant opportunity program. It is, like was mentioned, it's in 158 public schools currently. With that, I'll be glad to answer other questions. If not, I'll renew my motion.
Okay, committee, any further questions to the sponsor of the bill, Chairman Haston? Seeing none. Any objection to us calling the question? Seeing none, would the clerk please open the board for voting? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 ayes, 2 noes.
Okay, the bill does pass out to full committee. Thank you very much, committee and Chairman Haston. You're now recognized on House Bill 1002, Chairman Haston. You got a motion and you have a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill simply allows one of the already approved universal screeners to be utilized for pre-K teacher evaluations. Not as many moving parts as the last bill, but I'll be glad to answer any questions on this as well.
Questions on the bill from the committee right now? 1002. Seeing no questions, any objection to the question being called? Hearing no objection. Madam Clerk, would you open the board for voting? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes.
Okay, the bill does pass out. House Bill 1002 goes to a full committee. I will now turn the gavel back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, any other questions or personal orders before we wrap it up? Seeing none, we stand adjourned until next Tuesday.